Hey everybody, welcome to For the Love. We're glad you are here because this episode is a little bit different than our usual interviews, but it felt really important to bring you. Having experience now, we went, okay, we got to make sure this gets in the hands of everybody. What you're about to hear comes from a live conversation that I hosted recently with 4 of the smartest women that I trust. These are voices that I have returned to again and again and again when I am trying to make sense of midlife, healing, faith, body stuff, all the ways our lives are asking us harder, more important questions at this season. So joining me are incredible women. They have all been on this podcast before. We have traveled together. We have built meet courses together. Like this is my A team. We have Nedra Glover Tawwab, who was also just on super recently as a second-time guest.
Yeah.
Emily Nagoski, who is just a pioneer in her space. Campbell, who is so incredible. She also came on the JHBC cruise with me because she is such an incredible leader. And longtime friend and fan favorite, Kate Bowler, who has no enemies. She could not possibly. And so just to set expectations, this isn't a conversation about fixing yourself or getting your life together or some like to-do list or a bunch of homework. It's not that.
No, I actually watched this conversation live, and I was surprised by the content, even though I knew about it ahead of time. It touched on so many different things at once.
Yes, totally.
There was so much organic back and forth as they all built on each other's wisdom.
Yep, exactly.
And it really highlighted for me how these 4 areas, relationships, bodies, mental health, and faith, they're all layered.
They're just integrated.
They're all part of our greater healing.
Yep.
Yes, we do need sometimes to work on one thing more than something else.
Yep.
Like it may be a season where you're working on your mental health or your relationships, but addressing it in a holistic manner is what will lead us to the flourishing that we seek.
It's so real. I mean, in the middle of this conversation, and I was sort of leading it and moderating it and hosting it, there were so many times I was just like, oh my God. Like the wisdom. But also to Amy's point, the integration of it, where these make up a life. These big 4 disciplines make up a life. These are the 4 biggest areas that any one of us typically addresses. And so just know this before we jump in. If you have been feeling like something in your life just doesn't fit the way it used to, if it has outgrown its container, if you are sensing like growth or change or evolution, which comes with, and you will hear this loud and clear during this conversation, discomfort and sometimes chaos and even fear. You're normal. That is called growth. And we are thrilled that you are here. This episode is for you.
Okay, take a listen, and then we'll come back and add some commentary on the back end.
Okay, let's get into it. Good evening, everybody. Woo! Okay, I'm just delighted to welcome you. And there's quite a few of you. I want you to know that as you kind of logged in tonight to join me and these brilliant women, you are among 6,000 plus of your closest lady friends. So we have quite a crew gathered tonight, and we're honored that you're giving us an hour of your time, and we're just going to get right into it because we literally don't want to waste 30 seconds. So let me just tell you this first, everybody. Tonight's not necessarily about answers. It's not about action steps. We're not giving you homework. This isn't a to-do list or a template. This is really tonight about noticing. So it's it's allowing you space to notice what is shifting, and then certainly feeling less alone inside of that change, inside of that evolution. I really did bring a dream team tonight. These are 4 women that I trust so deeply. I have worked with numerous times. I keep going back to them and they keep saying yes because they don't feel like they can say no. And I will use that power for the whole rest of my life. I will exploit it as long as they don't change their cell phone numbers. And so these girls were going to help us name tonight what it looks like to wake up in real life. So we're going to be talking about 4 areas where awakening tends to show up first. So that's our relationships, our bodies, our mental health, and our faith. Okay. And so each of these women bring incredible wisdom and expertise and experience in those areas, but none of those areas live in silos, which is why this is a really integrated conversation tonight. So you're going to hear a few different voices responding as we go, because as you know, waking up in one part of our lives always affects the rest. So this is really an integrated conversation. I'm very, very, very grateful for you. And before I introduce you to the girls, I just want you to know that today is not meant to be a one-off, just to drop big ideas in your lap and then leave you on your own to ruminate. So if this conversation tonight stirs anything in you at all, I've created the Awake Collective over in Substack. A bunch of us are over there actually. So that's going to be a monthly place that you are able to come back to. So it's essentially for women in midlife who are paying attention to their lives and want support in making sense of what they are noticing, what they're experiencing through live conversations and reflection and community. You're going to hear more about that later. I just wanted you to know that there is a place for you if today resonates and you'd like more. All right, let me introduce this panel. First up, Nedra Glover Tawwab. Nedra, give a wave. Look at her. Look at her. Guys, if you've been around me and my show at all, you know Nedra. She's a licensed therapist, one of the most trusted voices on boundaries and emotional health today. She's the author of Set Boundaries, Find Peace, and her new book, The Balancing Act, comes out February 10th. Sis, that's next week.
That is next week.
That is next week. And
oh my gosh.
I am thrilled for you. In that book, everybody, she's helping us understand how to stay connected without losing ourselves. She is the absolute best. Body. We are going to fan favorite Emily Nagoski. My gosh. The things I've learned from you, ma'am. I could never list them all. Emily is a best-selling author. She's an educator whose work has totally reshaped how women understand their bodies and stress, sexuality, especially in midlife. Her books, Come As You Are, wink, Burnout. She brings science, compassion, relief in all these categories where there used to be shame. I just can't say enough. I really can't say enough about your work. And as you know, I plaster them all over my socials every time you write something. Mental health. We've got Campbell. I don't know how to articulate the wisdom and goodness that Kobe brings to every conversation. She's a licensed trauma therapist. She's the best-selling author of Why Am I Like This? She's the founder of the Healing Circle Therapy and Wellness Center. Just boring. Someday you'll make something of your life, Kobe. Just keep trying. Just keep trying. Her work helps people understand trauma and nervous systems and healing in ways that are helpful and practical and honest and deeply humane. And that brings us to faith. Kate Bowler, one of my favorite people in this planet Earth, on planet Earth. Kate has also been in my world so many times because it doesn't know how to refuse me. And so she is a theologian. She's a historian. She's a 4-time New York Times bestselling author. And she has given millions of us language for faith when some of that certainty falls away that we grew up with. So through her books, her Everything Happens podcast, She is constantly helping us tell the truth about suffering and hope and what it means to be human. So get excited because Kate has a book also coming out on April 7th titled Joyful Anyway. I've got my little advanced copy and on my table as we speak. Bravo. Bravo.
Thanks, love.
4 of the best women I know, 4 of the best leaders I know, teachers I know, practitioners I know, and more importantly, 4 of the best humans. So thank you for being here tonight. Let's get into it. I'd love for us to talk first. Let's sort of steer into the relationship waters. And this is, to some degree, everyone has some specialty here, but this is certainly Nedra's specialty. So Nedra, let me ask you this. When women say around this season of life, something shifted in my relationships, what are they usually naming, whether they know that or not?
I think what we see shifting is our capacity, our tolerance level, and what we hope to carry forward in our relationships. In this season of life, we want healthy relationships. And I think when you look around and you're like, oh my gosh, what have I been doing? Do I want to do this for the next 5, 10 years? Many people are starting to make a different decision. And it's not so much that we are changing, but it's like our capacity and tolerance is. It's like, yesterday this was fine, but boy, oh boy, today, the way that this behavior annoys me is alarming. And so we're looking at our relationships as places of peace, not chaos, not confusion. And sometimes we don't have that, and we are starting to make those shifts.
You said that so nicely. Like, I don't care for this anymore. And sometimes it comes out much more violently than that, let's be honest. Kobe, I want to ask you something about that. How do you see those kinds of relational shifts showing up in someone's central nervous system, in their body? What are some of the things they say to you when this is the undercurrent?
I think Nedra touched on it, like the irritation, like the visceral response to something that they would have in some other case just breezed by and been like, oh, that's just how she is. I'll get over it. But I think that as women wake up, they start to budget what their body can tolerate for longer periods of time. Like, yeah, I dealt with this for 15 years, but can I deal with it for another 15 years? Because now I'm recognizing that I have less tolerance as I age because it costs me more to show up in spaces. I can't show up in every space white knuckling it. I can't show up in every space feeling forgotten. I can't show up in every space as a giver, but not have people pour back into me. And so I think for a lot of women, they're starting to notice I cannot feel at peace in my body and remain connected to you in this way. And so something has to change.
I feel that so viscerally. Why do you think, what is it about getting older that changes our tolerance? Why are we so willing to take on such higher levels of abuse and disrespect and non-reciprocal relationships when we were younger? What, bless our young hearts.
Little young, naive hearts. I think
we have more time.
Well, that is true.
We don't have time anymore. Time is ticking. And it's like, if it's ticking, it could be next year for me. It could be 10 years. I think, when you're in your 40s, when you're in your 50s, you're starting to hear more about people dying, even if you're caring for your parents, like their friends. And you're like, wow, life is short. We don't have as much time as I thought. So to think about tolerating some of these behaviors for more and more years, it seems emotionally and physically unbearable.
Yep. I think a lot of us also thought that our relationships would pay out by now. Like I invested.
Yes. Ding, 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 ding.
like this. I'm at the emotional spiritual ATM. I'm at the evangelical. Pay me my money. It was supposed to pay out by now, and it hasn't paid out. And we're realizing, did I just invest everything I had into something that ended up being like a net zero?
Oh boy.
Mm-hmm.
And so people are ready to shift because they're like, with whatever I have left, I'm not investing in that again.
And if you were raised as a girl, you were taught from very early on that you had a moral obligation to be pretty, happy, calm, generous, and unfailingly attentive to the needs of others. And if you weren't all those things, then you didn't just fail, you are a failure. And because it's a moral obligation, you deserve to be punished. And if there's no one around to punish us, we'll just go ahead and beat the crap out of ourselves. And as we get into our 30s, 40s, 50s, we start, the light clicks on and we're like, oh, none of that was true. I followed all those rules for all those years. And there are some ways that I was rewarded for that. And there are some ways that I got enormously taken advantage of. And I'm going to set different, if it looked like I was checked out there for a second, it's because I was pre-ordering 2 books right now. So we learned to set better boundaries because we recognize that we don't actually owe it to everyone on earth to sacrifice our hopes and dreams, our bodies, our time on the altar of other people's comfort and convenience.
And I also, by the way, really
That's so awful.
I thought I'm going to change this person, like with my steady control, with my incredible influence. I will slowly make this person better. And with all my carefully crafted speeches, and I will use aggression or passive aggression, whichever I need, to drive it home, and that will eventually change another person. And turns out that is also that's sunk cost right there, and we just learn it around this age. Nedra, I want to ask you something, sort of that Emily just touched on, which how do you think women confuse being loving with being accommodating?
Good question.
Well, when I think of being loving, there is some carefreeness in it. There is a tinge of joy to it. There is some desire to see it through. When I think of being accommodating, I feel I get a sense of resentment, a sense of giving more than you would like to. It's a joyless activity. You are giving of yourself as a sacrifice, not as an offering.
Oh boy.
And
that's a word.
when we do that, I think we do think, oh my gosh, as Emily said, I'm being nice, I'm being kind, there will be some payoff for this. But over time, what starts to happen is we start to burn out with that person or that relationship. We get really frustrated at that person for not recognizing all of these accommodations, sometimes that we weren't even asked to make.
Of course.
Very often people are accommodating people in situations without even being asked, because it's like we feel like we should do it. No one told us, no one asked us. And that's sometimes why we're not being thanked for these things, because maybe they don't even care as much as we think they do. So we really have to pay.
No, finish that thought, Nedra.
It's so good. It's so good because when I didn't even realize this like awful lingering inheritance until last year. I found myself opening the chip bags of men that looked like my dad on an airplane, and then I was like, wait, I'm offering things that people are not asking for because I am replicating behaviors that are now slightly unhinged.
That's unhinged. And what I want to hear you add to that, Kate, is how, if it does, and I think it does, faith language has complicated that issue for a lot of women. That sense of accommodating, and then you add this faith layer, and now we've added morality to it, and it's even stickier. It's even thornier.
Yeah, I will. I just to build on the language, especially Emily used, like, becomes this new important way to demonstrate that we are good. And like, and am I not a righteous mom? Have we not seen my Christmas card? Have we not seen the way I show up on Sundays and Wednesday nights? Have I not demonstrated on Instagram that I am a faithful and loving and never disturbed, never needy, never wanty, never scared, never desperate, never I don't want to do this anymore, never. I'm that good. And I think just if we continue to inherit so many kinds of obligations, and then we begin to mirror some of the worst parts of maybe chaotic upbringings or a desire then for order, and we experience that again in a faith environment, we can end up living inside of a very boxed in world that continues to duplicate the desperate desire to be not just full and whole, but just another variation of terrifyingly perfect.
Girl, you're reading my mail. Dang.
My.
I want to shift. I want to shift over. I want to talk about our bodies for a minute. Just breezy. The way that we all feel very breezy about our bodies. This has just been such an endless source of joy for most women I know. And Emily, this is the crux of your work. And I know I've told you this before, but let me just say it again in front of all these women. So much of your writing has really set me free. Your work has been a key that turned the lock of a prison I was in. And so I wonder, let's start here, Emily. Why do you think, why does midlife sometimes make it harder to override our bodies the way we used to? When our bodies would give us a message and we just said, no, thank you. I'm not interested in that disruption. And the older we get, it's like we just can't keep ignoring that knock on the door.
So the way I think about this is in your 20s, you can pull all-nighters occasionally and it's okay. But now if you pull an all-nighter, like, you're wrecked.
Yeah.
You feel the cost of it. In your 20s, you were still wrecked the next day, but your body could mask the cost. It could compensate for it. If you did that for the first 20 or 30 years of your life, your body was masking the cost pretty effectively. And every time it masked the physiological cost of pushing yourself too far, you paid a little price. Yeah. And you paid that price every day of your life for 30 years. And eventually the bill comes due. Yeah. And that bill shows up as fibromyalgia.
Totally.
And fibroids and all the other health conditions and like terrifying, appalling, strange things that happen to our bodies during perimenopause that like our bodies would tolerate better if we hadn't spent the 40 years leading up to peri, like dragging ourselves through the mud every day and being like, this is fine. I'm fine. Look, I'm fine. One of the things that I often said to college students was just because you can doesn't mean you should. And these are like the high achieving, perfectionistic driven kinds of college age women. And they really resisted. And I was like, look, just because you can today, if you do it and it means you can't tomorrow, you couldn't actually today. So people have been paying that cost day after day after day after day and have sacrificed so much that they end up with nothing left to sacrifice, and they need to spend years healing from the damage they weren't even aware they were doing to their bodies for all those years.
Totally.
Day after day after day.
Kobe, how do you see in your work the stories that we learned about our bodies? And there isn't just one story, but there are several through lines that are really common handed to girls.
For sure.
Early in life. How do you see those resurfacing now that we are grown women?
Wow, there are several ways I see it resurfacing. One of the things that I think is like my favorite unexpected part of helping people navigate trauma is helping them build a tolerance for pleasure. That they're actually overexposed, have a tolerance for pain. But like they are sensitive to pleasure in the way most men, in my opinion, are sensitive to pain.
Bless them.
Bless them.
Bless them.
Don't let them get cold. But like, there's just this reality that, you know, when you have been traumatized, specifically in a way that is relational, when you have been wounded with messages, you know, about relationship, about faith, there is this internalized, embodied belief that pleasure is bad. Pleasure must be earned, and all pleasure must come at a high cost. And so that can show up sexually. We think of that word when we hear pleasure, but also just enjoying rest in their bodies, like helping them sensitize themselves to just sitting in their own bodies and resting without feeling like I have to do something, sensitizing themselves to being in relationships because it actually feels more satisfying to want to fix somebody in a relationship than it is to be in a genuinely reciprocal relationship. Same thing with friendships, feeling like this friendship is boring because they're healthy. You know, this friendship is, there's not a back and forth. There's not a possessiveness. There's not a earning, a striving. And so like teaching them to incrementally titrate towards pleasure.
That's so good.
That I see often.
Boy,
we're good. That's it. That was the answer. We're good. We're done.
We're done. We're going to close out on that note. That's so good. And Emily, I want to come back to you because I want to talk about shame. I want to talk about body shame particularly. Tons of us, most of us carry it to some degree. And most of us always have, but it seems to be getting louder the older we get. If we do not intentionally track it, pay attention to it, reverse the narratives, then it's our bodies going, hey, I'm not putting up with this for much longer. So this like shame voice is so loud. And so I'm curious where you think that shame actually comes from and why it has such stubborn power over us when we know better. We're at the age where we know better. We know a better narrative about our bodies. And here we still are trying to whack-a-mole this thing down. What do you think that's about?
Yeah, which part of us knows? Like my prefrontal cortex has a very big vocabulary about how much I love my body. But the rest of me has been saturated in a white supremacist, cis heteropatriarchal, rabidly exploitative, late capitalist, ableist thin culture for 48 going on 49 years.
That's right.
And even if I do work on that every single day, it's still not going to be enough to fully counterbalance all of the garbage my body has absorbed about the ways it's broken and wrong, and I'm not allowed to love it exactly the way it is. And because part of this nauseating culture we live in also fetishizes youth as we age and we experience the normal, healthy process of aging, our body transitions from coming as close as it was ever going to have come to conforming to that culturally constructed aspirational ideal to changing, and the fat on your body moves around and the texture of your skin changes and the color of your hair changes and everything changes. And in the research, what we see is a split. Some women just sort of like collapse under the weight of these things in terms of like our sexuality in particular. They sort of get to menopause and are like, phew, I don't have to worry about that whole sex thing anymore. And other people are like, they get to menopause and they're like, oh, all that stuff I invested so much time and energy and money and self-criticism and emotional weight trying to fix and change everything. I don't have to worry about any of that junk anymore. And I can just experience pleasure in this body that I'm living in today because I'm allowed to experience pleasure in this body that I live in now is worthy of experiencing pleasure. And I'm not saying it's easy. There's a wonderful exercise I learned from the genius Adrienne Marie Brown, who taught me this gratitude for pleasure activity specifically we all know gratitude is good for you. Gratitude. But specifically, every day when I come up for air after a long day of working, the first thing I do when I come out of my office is notice something that just like the sight of it or the thought of it or the smell of it, it's my husband cooking dinner, whatever it is, gives me a sense of pleasure. I notice that pleasure and I feel gratitude. I am so grateful that I have the capacity to experience pleasure and joy in that sensation. And it grounds me back into reality, pulling me out of that work zone space. I don't know if anybody relates to like getting stuck in that state of mind.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Therapists.
Can I add something here?
Yes.
Yes. I'm hearing this and I'm just thinking about in our relationships when our friends, our family members are showing signs of gray hairs or weight gain in the tummy area. Like the things that we say are so important. I cannot tell you how many women have said to me, so you're just going to embrace the grays. I'm like, I'm just sitting down, eting my lunch.
That's right. That's right.
But no,
You're
I didn't
choosing
say
violence.
I hate my grays. I didn't say I'm just sitting here. But sometimes our own discomforts with our bodies, we spill that onto other people. If I dye my hair, you should dye your hair. If I have an issue with not being able to lose weight in this time, I'm going to tell you about this thing. We have to be careful about the way that we're showing up in our relationships because it's not just with ourselves and what we've heard. We're also talking about this toward our people. And that impacts the way that they show up. You know, another thing that I hear a lot about is signs of aging. So, you forgot that because you're getting old. No, I have a lot going on. I have a lot of things I'm managing at once. And that has nothing to do with age. That's just life. You know, so I think the more we can be mindful of how our language, how our reaction to signs of aging is showing up in our relationships, the healthier those relationships can be. Even if we're not embracing this stuff for ourselves, we don't have to say it to other people and we certainly don't have to point it out.
Yes. I think that's why a lot of people are changing their relationships. Like I say to my clients that we absorb the voices of the people we are around. You know, sometimes you'll say things to yourself and a client will be like, I was thinking this to myself. I'm like, whose voice is that? That's my mom's. That's my. And so I think for women who are trying to figure out how do I step into this next season as a different version of myself, they're also realizing I have to have conversations with the people I'm around because I need to make sure that the voices I'm absorbing are not trying to make me resist something that I actually want to experience, which is like this awakening, this transformation, this stepping into newness. So yeah, I think that's true. It's hard not to criticize your own body when you're around people who always criticize their bodies.
Yeah, that's right.
Shoot. This is how we keep becoming offenders in our own relationships and communities, like even unknowingly. And I know what you're saying. I can hear those phrases and words and thoughts and conversations as recently as this week in my ordinary walking around relationships, and it just kind of reinforces this negative narrative. And by the way, I mean, Emily, have the last word on this before we move forward, but I mean, we can't wait around for our culture to get the memo and do better by us. Like, that's not how this is going to happen. We are not going to experience liberation here because the beauty industry finds a heart. Like, that's not it, right? Like, this is going to have to be an inside job.
The beauty industry will find a heart just as soon as we pay it to have a heart, which we do by not giving it money. People, I'm going to use bad language, people who feel like shit buy more shit. So they have a vested interest in making sure we hate as many things as possible about ourselves and make the solutions to the problems they've invented for us as expensive as they possibly can. And no, the way we can't wait for the culture to change. the way we change the culture is to change our own lives and to creating what in burnout, Amelia and I call a bubble of love, where you surround yourself with people who care about your well-being as much as you care about theirs. And I don't mean as much as you care about your own, because don't we, so many of us, find it easier to care about other people's well-being more than we care about our own.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a fact.
Yep.
All right. Before we move forward, just everybody listening in tonight, just as a reminder, if you're hearing something, it's like it's zinging you, you've got the zing, or the stomach feels, or like for me, when I hear something that gets right at the heart of it, the backs of my hands prickle. It's a terrible response. I hate it, but it never lies. Just a reminder, that's what this Awake Collective is for. We have created this for you. If there's a place you're like, where do I take this? How we need more of this? It's going to be over on Substack, and we're going to have all kinds of awesome stuff, monthly check-ins and gatherings and conversations. It's in private. It's a private community space, so you can feel safe over there. So the weird watching troll world doesn't get to come in as interlopers. So it's just no pressure or perfection, just togetherness. Anyway, there'll be more about that in the chat. So just stick with me on that. Let's talk about mental health. Again, all four of your disciplines deeply work inside the field of mental health. Kobe, it's your particular specialty. So let me ask the first question here. To Kobe, why is it that it seems that clarity and anxiety often arrive about the same time? What's the link here?
Well, there is a link. Anxiety narrows our focus. That's what it's meant to do, right? It creates in our body at a neurological level, it creates for us a sense of urgency that allows us to focus acutely on something, right? But the way that our body's designed, it's not designed to help us sustain clarity in that state, right? Anxiety can help us say, oh my gosh, there's a bear right there. I'm focusing on that thing, but anxiety is not going to help you have holistic clarity, because that same anxiety, when we're experiencing it on a neurological level, is going to shut down our prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that helps us engage in rational thinking. So I think for a lot of us, the anxiety helps us focus on the thing that's most threatening to the peace that we want to experience right now. But I think it's also really important that we make sure that we don't tie anxiety to the clarity in the way of thinking anxiety is the only way I can get clarity. So like it can be a byproduct of like the clarity can be a byproduct of the anxiety, but you can get clarity without the anxiety. The anxiety is there because there's an urgency. And so if I was working with a client, I'd say, okay, what feels urgent right now about the thing that you're anxious about? Oftentimes it's like, like Nedra said, time's running out. Maybe someone passed away and you just thought it was normal. And then 3 weeks later, you're starting to feel anxious about the things you haven't done or the conversations you haven't had. And you don't even realize passively that you've absorbed this awakening of mortality. Like this awakening that like, wow, that person passed away really unexpectedly. That means that I could pass away unexpectedly. The people I love could pass away unexpectedly. And so I always say, like, lean into the clarity that you're getting from the anxiety, but don't get so attached to the anxiety that you make yourself anxious as a way to try and gain clarity.
Oh boy. I'd love to hear one of you weigh in on maybe the best practices when anxiety knocks. Number one, how do we recognize it in our body? Like, what does that look like? How does it show up? Because sometimes we have so many swirling emotions and feelings and moving parts that who the hell knows which thing is which? Like, what is it? Is this anxiety? Is this a character flaw? Is this somebody's asking too much of me? Is this a relational boundary? And so, what does anxiety look and feel like in a body? And what would you guys, I'm sorry, this is undirected. Anybody gets this. What do we do with it so that, to your really good point, Kobe, anxiety will run us down. I ran on anxiety for almost a year and ended up in the ER. So that's how well that worked out. Yeah. It's not sustainable. It did help me get stuff done.
Yeah.
But it also broke my body in half.
Yeah.
So I'd love to hear thoughts on better management, because anxiety is going to happen. We can't solve that.
Yeah.
Anxiety requires action. Think of it as the new AA, anxiety in action. You have to do something when you're feeling anxious. And unfortunately, for many of us, our inclination is to stay still, to hope that it goes away, to continue to think about something. But the best way to address our anxiety is to come up with a solution and execute it.
Dang.
Which is really hard. I had a friend who had terrible flying anxiety. And here I am, I'm a therapist. And I said, go to a therapist, talk to someone. She did. And both of our recommendations were the same. You have to get on a plane. There's no way to cure that, because anything else is just avoiding it. So yes, it feels better to never be on a plane, but you haven't overcome the anxiety.
Yeah.
The anxiety is overcome by a little bit of titration, right? Like you have to do the thing, and then you do it and you're like, oh, I survived it. And then you do it again. It's like, I survived it again. And then it simmers down because it's this big, scary thing until you execute that solution.
Dang. I just feel like you're being so rude to me right now.
I'm not saying I know I'm not saying I know anything about sports, but it does remind me of one thing someone told me about sports, which is that I was talking to Coach K, who is the Duke basketball coach, and he has a lot of sort of very high stress, high anxiety moments, which he's trying to get players through. And he said he noticed that right after a failure or in fear of a big game, that like players would stop, they would just look stiff, or right after they got criticism, they just would tense up. And he always said, he was like, you just got to keep staying loose, because action will absorb, just what you're saying, that our action will absorb anxiety. So like maybe for me, it would mean just like try to stay in motion and then move toward the action that you're describing. But the more that I continue to like keep it, create momentum. Yeah, go for it. Emily.
That's absolutely like Emily's thesis. About
I mean,
burnout.
it's just the physiology of it is that stressors activate stress in your body. And in an ideal world, which is kind of to say the environment that we're adapted for, dealing with the stressor would always eliminate the stress that got activated in our body. The reality is that there's often like, in my ideal world, if I'm afraid of flying, I get on a plane, I experience the anxiety, I dwell with it with kindness and compassion for myself. I learn that even though I feel unsafe, I am actually safe. But at the same time that I'm doing it, I can walk up and down the aisles and flap my hands and jump up and down and look like a total weirdo. But the reality is a lot of us aren't going to do that. We're going to sit really tight and hard in our chair like this, which is why building up a practice of like noticing that our stress level is rising and then allowing the stress to move out and through our bodies, complete the stress response cycle, often using movement, using loving connection, using connection with spiritual, the divine. There's 11 in just chapter 1 of Burnout, available free online all over the internet, I'm sure. Completing the stress response cycle is a thing you can do, even if the thing that activated the stress in the first place still exists, which is good because in the workplace, we often have to smile and go, that's a good point that I just made 10 minutes ago that Jeff is now saying, that's a great point. And you behave yourself and you smile and you're nice. And then on your drive home, you grip the steering wheel and you scream and you complete the stress response cycle in the car later because you behaved yourself because you want to have a job tomorrow.
You are so right. I learned that from you years ago when we did Burnout in the book club. And we still say, complete the stress cycle. And it's as simple as walking a lap, taking a lap. You gave us a lot of options. But to Kate's point, it's exactly what Coach K said. The stiff thing, it just requires a different approach to that. I really actually love that because that's free and available to anybody ever.
Yeah.
Ever. We always have a side door out through our bodies, which are incredibly built to lead us right back to wholeness. And I want to bring that question back to you, Kobe, before we move on to Faith, which I wonder, what would you say is one or two, whatever, misconceptions that women have about healing? Because you deal so specifically with trauma, that actually slows them down. What are we getting wrong about healing? What's our wrong thinking about healing? What are we not quite getting right? And it's actually impeding the process.
Yes. I have two responses that kind of go together. One, that the idea of healing means that we can perfectly control all the emotions that we feel and express. That, like, if I am healed, that means I never have a low moment. If I'm healed,
so
I
true.
never really pissed off. If I'm healed, then I never feel like I just have a sad day. That a full life requires full spectrum of emotions. So like a healed life is not just feeling happy, excited, happy, excited, happy. That's not a healed life. And I think that ties into the second thing, which is that regulation means that you are always happy. Regulation means that you have a response that's proportionate to the stimuli. So if somebody hits you with the car, a regulated person would scream. A dysregulated person would just absorb it and act like everything's okay. Right. And so what happens oftentimes is I'm working with women in their healing, they feel more deeply and they're more responsive and more sensitized to their environment, which is often a traumatic environment. Right. That's part of the healing. Sometimes the healing begins with you being sensitized to what's around you, to what you were previously desensitized to, enough that you consider that I need to make changes about my environment. And so they start to feel like I'm healing, but now I'm feeling tension internally, and that tension is affecting my relationships, and that tension is affecting my beliefs about God, and that tension is affecting all these things. And so it's hard because they stop peacekeeping in relationships and they start peacemaking internally, and they realize that peacemaking in here often results in chaos out here.
Oh boy.
And so then they feel like I'm healing wrong or I'm not healing. Like, no, disruption actually is a sign that you are changing, that you're evolving, that you are stepping into a fuller version of yourself. And so just because things are beginning to feel uncomfortable as you heal doesn't mean that you're not healing or that you're doing it wrong.
Damn.
Yeah.
That is good. I have goosebumps.
That's good.
One thing I notice with clients coming to therapy is they will cry the entire first session. And at the end of it, they'll be like, I never cried like this about this thing. And I'm like, you never talked about it. You never talked about it. So the crying is foreign because this is the first time that they have allowed themselves to feel and be in the experience. And when it comes up, it's like, should I come back? Is it going to be like this every time I come?
Totally. I hate it here.
Yeah. For 40 years, you've been going and you've been trying to push this thing down. And now that you've let it out, it wants to feel. You may cry a little bit, but that's actually a good thing.
That's
good. The noticing that's required for healing.
Yes.
Because you've been ignoring.
How do you see sometimes faith language complicating this idea of healing, of true healing, good healing, deep healing, real healing? Faith should be its best friend. Those should be absolute best companions, but sometimes they are at odds.
Yeah. I just love this like deep wisdom you guys are sharing about that strangeness where you feel like, well, if shouldn't faith feel like everything healed, nothing broken? Shouldn't a faithful woman be able to look at her own life and say, I mean, if you just think about all of the monikers, like all the sort of catchphrases of like the worst kinds of religious certainty, you know, moral majority, religious right. Like these are all been stories about people with nothing broken, perfect certainty, like able to weaponize a fully formed worldview where everything feels complete.
Yeah.
And I don't know a woman who feels that way.
Same.
There is this achiness inside that starts to then feel like faithlessness. Am I bad because I feel like I want more, that I know that even my best spiritual self doesn't feel complete, that wants things, that is angry at God, or begs for things that don't come true, or is incredibly horrified by their lives at 2 a.m., but at 2 p.m. is like, got it real tight. I mean, it's just a very strange world to live with that much ache. And I think it took me until very recently, and a lovely conversation I had with this priest named Father Ron Rolheiser. And he said, Kate, that ache inside, that there is nothing wrong with that ache. It is in fact a sacred thing. That ache is just holiness that needs to express itself. And you can do it in a healthy way, or you can do it in an unhealthy way. But that ache is, spirituality is what you do with the ache. It doesn't mean that the ache itself is bad. And I think if someone had told me that restlessness, that feeling of not completeness did not mean that I was less faithful, I would be a different kind of Christian. But it did take me until being middle-aged and having that feeling you guys described of things not adding up to the life I thought I frankly deserved.
Girl.
That is good.
On that note, let's pivot over to faith a little bit. And you mentioned certainty a moment ago, and everybody, us five plus the women who are joining us from their homes tonight, you know, we're all over the place on what faith is or isn't, what our history is, what our current preferences are. But I do know a great deal of us, a big percentage of us, certainly did grow up with a faith that was handed to us, written in stone. It was absolutely certain. And that was part of its stability, was that we've got it. Like, we got it. Yeah. We've knocked it down. We've got the answers. We've sorted it out. Like, we have this all figured. And I remember when I was younger, something about that felt comforting. It felt like, oh gosh, in this wild world, something feels like a sure thing. Something is definitely right or wrong. Something, it has some edges that I can count on. But of course, we get older and realize, first of all, that's not how the world works, but also it's not how faith works. And so I would like to hear your thought, first of all, Kate, on the truth about what spiritual awakening looks and feels like when that certainty starts to fall away, because it's a bit of a mixed bag, to be honest.
Yeah. Yes, it is. And I just to circle back to the beginning of the conversation about how, what is it then that this kind of this faith awakening might feel like, particularly at middle age, is we kind of get an opportunity for not just deconstruction, taking away some of the pieces that did not do us good, that did not help us understand our own goodness, did not help us understand a deeper love of God. We get a chance to kind of take some of those pieces apart, but for a lot of us who are then have kids that we're trying to figure out what to pass on and what to duplicate and what to just get rid of, I do think there's kind of a loveliness to that reckoning, which is what am I going to keep comes due about now? And I think that to me, this is an opportunity not just to say, well, I'm going to try to shove my kid in a Sunday school so they get a lesson about this. I think there's an opportunity for a softer, almost younger self to come out. What are those little pieces of the faith that that still bring tears to my eyes or warm me somehow? Is it this part of the music? Is it, to me, it's the old ladies at church that used to write their little like we have in Canada, PST, like there's a PSG check is just like a $65 a year. They would sign it over to me so I could be a camp counselor in the summer, like sweetness in acts of faithfulness, like people to admire and feel loved by, like that kind of stuff reminds me of being young and loved and like held in something. So I think I think it needs to go both ways. It needs to be a reckoning with the stuff we don't want, and maybe a chance to be like soft again about the stuff that genuinely raised us.
I really love that answer. That's really a beautiful framing of this sort of evolution. I'd love to hear really from any of the other three of you, because you all deal with women or clients who are carrying a shifting faith in their bodies, in their minds, in their souls, in their relationships. I mean, this can absolutely be disruptive in relationships, in a community, Emily, in a body. Like this shows up in the way we think about everything, everything about our bodies. Anyway, I'd love to hear from any or all of you on what this looks like unhealed, unaddressed, ignored, or repressed.
The first thing that comes to mind for me is one of my favorite things to kind of like shake the table a little bit with my clients who are hyper religious, is to bring up a study that Baylor University did on the effects of prayer on adults in the United States who had symptoms of anxiety disorder, OCD, things of that nature, symptomology in that. And they found that people who prayed to a God, all identified as Christian, people who prayed to a God that they believed was angry at them, punitive, judgmental, waiting to punish them, actually had higher anxiety symptomology.
Yeah.
And people who prayed to a God that they believed loved them, cared about them, benevolent, had lower symptomology. And so I often ask them, like, does engaging with God in a state where you feel fragile make you feel better or worse?
That's a great question.
Is your faith making you sicker? If it's making you sicker, it's betraying its own values. That's what we're seeing in this culture. We're seeing culture perpetuated where the faith that's meant to be espoused, it's betraying itself. Right?
That's right.
House divided can't stand. That's why it's crumbling. That's why a lot of people's faith is crumbling, because they're being told that there's this faith that's sure and strong and cares for the weak and the vulnerable, but is least accommodating, least kind, least compassionate to the weak and the vulnerable. So I tell them, like, hey, you can't, there's only so well I can help you get as long as you hold tightly to these beliefs. And that's just that's just the truth. Like there's for many Christians, I can speak from that perspective, like they can only get as well as their theology is healthy.
Oh, dang.
And so that's where people like hate come in, that there's that like, I can't force you to engage in practices that help you get well if you're going to retreat from things that bring you health because you're afraid that the guy already mad at you is going to get madder at you. Girl, we got to figure it out.
That's right.
We have to ask some questions. And that's one thing I love about women who wake up, women who get to this place in life is like start to ask questions.
That's right. That's right.
A place where you can start to ask questions is a place where you can experience transformation because you're willing to say, I'm no longer the expert. I'm no longer willing to read the script of this, this grand play. And I'm willing to discover, even at an age where everyone says I should have everything figured out.
Lovely. It's lovely.
So good. Either of the rest of you?
It's so good.
Oof.
I will add one sentence, that there is no state, no physical state, no emotional state, no relational state, no spiritual state you can get into that is inherently dangerous or the enemy. It is getting stuck in that place, in any place. When we have the fluidity and flexibility to transition through states, that's where our central nervous systems are at, and our relationships and our connections are at their healthiest.
I really appreciate you saying that. It goes back to just an earlier conversation that it is possible to like be working intently and seriously and sober-mindedly on health and healing and still have a lot of disruption and stress and anxiety and none of these really important conversations that we are holding inoculate us from life or from bad days or from hard questions or relationships gone sideways. They just simply mean we are developing the tools to be more resilient, more flexible, quicker to recover, quicker to heal. And I think that's where we're at. I think that's the question of the day. I find myself asking that at age 51 a lot. I like what you said, Nedra, like we're running out of time, man. I'm over the halfway mark at this point. So how much shit am I going to do and put up with for the rest of my life? Like this time's a ticket. Like this is it. This is our life. And we're not getting any days back. And so girls, thank you for being here tonight. Thank you for bringing your incredible work to bear. Not just obviously on your communities and practices and spaces, but on mine. You have served my community for many, many, many years, and we are better and stronger and smarter and wiser and more faithful because of it. And that's just a fact. I respect every one of you so much, and I like you. Like, I really like you. That matters to me. Thank you for being funny. Thank you so much for being jokesters and for saying curse words sometimes. And just, I love everything about every one of you. And I thank you for being here tonight so much. We're going to roll you guys off. And I have one last message for everybody else joining us. I bid you 4 beautiful queens adieu. And like I told you before we started recording, anybody who says yes to a 7 p.m. night thing deserves a prize. You deserve a parade. Okay. And so I owe you 4 parades and I will find a way to deliver. All right. Thanks, you guys.
All right, you guys.
Thank you.
Love you.
Bye.
Love you. All right. Everybody else. 2 more minutes. I just have a final message for everyone watching before we wrap up. First of all, thank you for being here. Over 6,000 of us tonight gathered. That's something, right? Like that is special. That is special and rare. And I just feel my heart feels so full from your presence tonight. And let me just end with this. If tonight in any way, big or small, helped you see yourself maybe a little more clearly, if it was at all diagnostic, if somehow you caught a little light bulb over your head about your patterns or your questions or your responses or feelings, maybe even the places you feel stuck, like Emily was just saying, I don't want that to slip through your fingers. I don't want you to feel like, oh, but I almost had it and it was just over and I couldn't find a landing spot for it, or I couldn't add enough to it to make it stick. This is exactly why. This whole conversation tonight, all of this that we're discussing is why I created the Awake Collective over on Substack. Some of you are already a part of it. First of all, what it's not, this is not a program to keep up with. It's not homework. It's simply a monthly place to gather. That's it. Where you can keep coming. This is for women in midlife, just paying attention to their lives, really wanting some help to make sense of what they're noticing, what they are realizing, ways that they are shifting or changing, but without doing it alone and without constantly spiraling. So inside the Awake Collective over there, we're going to slow things down enough to really look at what's happening, what keeps coming up for us, what are we reacting to? What's just ready for change, you know? And we'll talk about it together, deeply, safely, honestly. So every month I'm going to show up with a video check-in just to help frame the season we're in, the conversation we're hosting specifically. We're going to gather live for really the gritty kind of conversations where we're going to be able to reflect and get perspective and then talk through wise, reasonable, doable next steps for real life. Like this is just real stuff for you. Also, this is so exciting for you. Once you join the Awake Collective over in Substack, you will immediately receive the most incredible resource that we built. It's called the Wake Up Call Reflection Guide. It's beautiful. It is so helpful, so tactile, so practical. It's journaling prompts, very gentle practices and language, essentially, to help you name what is opening up in you. It is not homework. Okay. Do not panic. It's just tools. That's all it is. Tools to help you understand yourself better and move forward with intention. So, it's a like a really small fee over there because it's private. It felt really important to me to create a private community for this, where any old random troll or bot or interloper cannot helicopter themselves into the conversation, into the space and create havoc. I have enough of that on social media. That's what social media is. I needed this to be safer. I needed this to have some guardrails around it so that we can protect the conversation and really ultimately so that I can protect you. And that's just a fact. And this is kind of the safest place I can find to do it. So that is going to include obviously a private community thread in which we can constantly tell the truth to each other. I'm maybe most looking forward to that piece of it. So this is just about clarity and companionship and not having to figure out everything by yourself. We're in this together, you guys. We absolutely are. I hope tonight showed you we are asking the same questions. We are wrestling with the same issues. We are changing in so many similar ways. Like this community is just growing up together in midlife. It's beautiful. It's so beautiful. It's so encouraging. I'm so inspired by you. And then I have so many smart friends who invest in us and hold up these lanterns for us as we keep walking forward. So all that to say, if you're ready for a place like that, I'd love to have you. There's going to be a link in the chat for you right now. And you can just look at it, find out more and decide. And remember, as soon as you join the Awake Collective, you get that Wake Up Call Reflection Guide, and it is phenomenal. And that's just the start. That's really just the beginning. We are rolling that out to be a space that is so meaningful and instructive and productive. I actually can't wait to see it. 2026 is lit. I cannot wait for us to do this work together. Come join us. Thank you for being here tonight. Thank you so much. I am honored by your presence. I am so honored by it. And I hope that tonight was encouraging. You heard something good. You heard something true. Even if you heard something that you just went, I feel seen. I feel seen by that. That was worth being here tonight. So much love to you, community. Can't wait to see you over the Awake Collective on Substack. Let's build something beautiful together. Good night. All right, you guys, I know you heard this, but we'll put up links for everything. First of all, this episode, so you can return to it. There's so much in here. This is one of those, like, listen 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. And you're gonna pick up more every time. This is definitely one to share with your daughters, with your sisters and your best friends, with your mom, with your small group. Like, this is the stuff. And so, but also, if you're interested in the Awake Collective, we are taking this and running with it. We are grabbing this ball and running down the field, diving into things in depth, in layers, in conversation with each other, more experts, more best practices, and certainly more community, because it's just, these are areas that tend to feel lonely sometimes or isolating. And so having a very safe space away from the touch of trolls or bots, or haters, mm-hmm. which social media is just like wide open, vulnerable to all that, as you guys know. I'll put the link for the Awake Collective over on Substack too. If you're already a subscriber, by the way, you automatically are in the Awake Collective. So that's not two different things. That's just the one. So that'll be all over at jenhatmaker.com under the podcast tab. And I will make sure you have all these women's handles, follows, websites. Like these are the best of the best, in my opinion, in their various areas. And so we are lucky to have them.
So lucky.
Lucky to have them. So I hope this episode served you well, and we'd love to have you in the Awake Collective. And we'll see you next week.